Welcome to the latest edition of the Jungle Juice podcast. I'm Sam Gormley. He's Mick Nelson. Mick, happy. Oh, now I've got to find it. I wasn't prepared. Essex Johnson, Kyle Larson, Auden Tate, and my favorite Bengal of all time, Brandon Tate. Days away from Bengals taking on the Patriots at Paycor Stadium. I love Brandon Tate.
I know you do, buddy. It's
He is to me what Zach Carter is to you.
yeah.
He's never a Brandon Tate fan. And Brandon, if you're listening today, I'm sorry. Maybe listen. I'd love to have you on the pod. If you're listening, send us a message. Like we'll have it on. You can tell me why I shouldn't have disliked you as much. Listen, I'm willing. And Zach Carter, if you want to tell Mick that he's wrong,
See, I'll give Brandon Tate some love here because even though he wasn't a great kick returner or punt returner, he had some games where he just went off as a wide receiver. Like he had I think that Chiefs game in 2015. I think that's like the best reminder I think I have of his receiving. How good of a receiver he could be at times. I think he had like 150 yards in that game, if I remember correctly. I'm actually going to look that up.
I was going to say, I was just always so anti-Brandon Tate that I've pretty much just blocked any potential positive memory out of anything that he did. So just whenever I think of him, I just think of he did nothing. He let us down every single time. And I know that that's maybe just a little bit of an exaggeration. I didn't necessarily plan on talking about Brandon Tate for the first minute. Who'd have thought that the first wide receiver that we dedicate a minute to on today's podcast would be Brandon Tate and not Jamar Chase? We'll talk about him a little bit later on in the show. In fact, not even really just later on, more in just in a couple of minutes. Because there is, we got to talk about that. I think that's the only way that we have to describe with that. Also on the show, Evan McPherson, we'll talk about him. He signed a deal. Glovegate is a thing. Is it? I don't know. Maybe, kind of. We'll talk about that. The joint practice today happened against the Colts. Some good stuff came out of it. Much better than what happened in the joint practice against the Bears last week. Speaking of that Bears game, we're going to talk about that. A lot to unpack with it. And I think, Mick, one of the questions I'm going to ask you when we get to that portion of is, are the overreactions overreactions? We'll have that a little bit later on. And then, of course, we've got Bengals Colts on Prime on Thursday night. We're really excited for that. And then we'll dive all the way into the 53-man roster discussion because there are some fascinating battles, that are going to be happening on this team coming up this year. But first, Mick, we do have to start off with a little bit of, as we say in the business, personal news. We're excited to, and I forgot to mention to you that we were going to at least bring this up, Mick, that we are now a part of the Fansided Podcast Network. What does that mean? What does that mean for you watching?
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, nothing's going to change. What we're hoping is that it'll bring us more opportunity to bring you better content. I know one of our goals is to reach out to some of the other Fansided podcasts and say, hey, Bengals are playing you coming up this week. Let's talk. Let's talk. Let's learn more because it's one thing for us to say, oh, yes, Drake May is the quarterback for the Patriots. But, Mick, I think I can speak for you in saying that I have barely watched any Patriots preseason football. Whereas the Patriots podcast might be able to give us some more insight on what Drake May has really looked at like in the preseason and training camp and what we could expect. So that's some of our goals, hopefully, this year to bring you the best content that we possibly can for that. So, Mick, good job. We worked hard, right? Not really.
Yeah, thank you to the folks over at Fansided for bringing us on. We're really excited for this opportunity and like you said, to maybe connect with other podcasts throughout the league, having a more encompassing discussion on both sides. So
and we're hopefully too that maybe they'd want to have us on their podcast and too, so we can share the same information about. I'm sure that the Patriots are probably wondering the same thing of, ooh, Joe Burrow's wrist. Are we concerned? Are we not? So at least we'll have to talk a little bit about that. But enough about that, Nick. Enough about us. It's time for us to have an actual, real man-to-man discussion right now. We've touched on it for what, like past 4 shows, 5 shows, something like that. And each week I ask you the question of, are you concerned about Jamar Chase? And really, I think for the most part, for the last 4, 5, 6, 8, 12, 90 shows, however many it's been, you've said no, not really. Mick, I ask you again now. We are 19 days. We are Brandon Tate days away from the Bengals kicking off the season. Are you concerned about Jamar Chase still not having suited up and worn the pads once? But yet he is still there. Are you concerned?
No, not in that respect. I'm not. I think that he'll eventually be on the field for us probably in week 1, playing good football at wide receiver. So I don't really have any concerns with that still. But I think that the fan base and the outside media and probably the in-house media is probably just getting kind of antsy here. I think we're just wanting to see some form of resolve here with Jamar Chase, whether he decides to just show up to practice and we work out an extension with him in the offseason, or we end up extending him, which I think is the smarter thing to do. I don't really have any worries that he's going to be on the field. I mean, like I said in prior podcasts, it'd be great we get him out now just with a new offensive coordinator. Joe Burrow's back from injury. But he's still been in the building. He's still working out. It's not like he's not going to be in shape and ready to go come week 1. But yeah, I just think that the fan base is just getting really, really, really antsy on this now. I think we've seen a lot of discussion about it on the Houday Nation, Facebook group. And I think a lot of people, I think there's 2 different factions of fan base right now. It's, people are saying, well, hey, Jamar should honor the contract that he signed immediately. The contract that he signed as a rookie, where he doesn't really have a lot of leeway in the control of the contract and the way it goes and how much money he's making on that. And then there's the people that, I think that are pro Jamar and wanting him to make the most amount of money he can, that understand why he's holding in right now. I mean, I think to criticize another person for doing whatever that person can do to make as much money as they can, as long as it's legal for sure, I think it's wrong for anybody to really criticize somebody for that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And I'm really on the fence because I understand where really both sides are coming. Like, I understand like the point you just made where it's like, man, he's got to make his money. But at the same time, I also understand the side and the fan group that is saying more of, okay, you've got guaranteed money this year and you've already got guaranteed money next year. You're under contract for 2 years. At what point do you have to say, I'm under contract? I understand. That's like, I can at least, sometimes you see takes on the internet, Nick, and I know this is going to blow your mind. Are you ready for this? Sometimes you're going to see things on the internet that are outlandish. I know that you've never seen anything, especially on Bengals Twitter or Bengals Facebook. I mean, there are never any hot takes. Never. But this is at least one that I'm like, okay, I at least see where you're coming from. Now, the people that have the other side of like, oh, well, Joe Burrow's overpaid, that would be the take where I'm like, yeah, no, you're an idiot. If you think that. And honestly, yeah, you kind of are. With this, though, like, I see where Jamar's coming from. Because what happens for him, his thought process is, okay, what happens if I'm in training camp and I tear my ACL? Now, surgery these days, it is very, 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 very rare that guys don't come back from ACLs. It's rare these days. Medicine has gotten better. Surgeries has gotten better. Recovery has gotten better. But if it's the wrong kind of knee injury, that thing nags. It might make him lose a step, and it might make him, I mean, if we're being honest, from being whether you want to call him a tier 1 or tier 2 wide receiver, whatever you want to, we can make that argument. That could be for another day. It could bump him down to a tier 3, and that difference is maybe $10 million a year.
Yeah, and I think that's the same discussion point for both sides. I think a lot of it does have to do with like the injuries, because you're thinking from Jamar's side is like, well, yeah, if I get injured right now, that's going to hamper my future earnings, on a second contract. And then the Bengals are also kind of thinking that too on their end, right? Where they're like, well, we don't normally extend guys with 2 years left on their contract unless if it's Joe Burrow. And what if we extend him and then he also gets injured and then he's not the same player again? So I think that's where the core difference probably is with the timing of this contract extension. The one thing I also kind of worry about though is just with how hectic this offseason has been between Jamar Chase and the front office and the external media making a big deal about it. How much is that going to leave a sour taste in Jamar Chase in his agent's mouth when they come to renegotiate or they try to get an extension done in the offseason? Is that going to leave a bad taste in their mouth? Probably won't. I mean, we saw Justin Jefferson do the same thing last year, and he signed an extension with Minnesota this offseason. So I don't know if that's really a huge worry of mine, but it's definitely something to kind of think about.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand both sides of this. And I really don't know how it gets solved because I'm fascinated by, let's say, Mick, when we're doing in 2 weeks, when we're breaking down the Patriots game.
Yeah.
Let's say a deal's not done. And honestly, I don't think one will be done. Is Chase to the point where he would be willing to sit out regular season games?
I don't think he would. But I do think that there's just enough pressure from everybody, from all sides to the Bengals right now, that they might feel like they should just get this done. It's not good PR for them to be, extending this as long as they have without making some concessions here. And Chase has already kind of made concessions to the Bengals already. I mean, he's already talked in prior interviews that he's down with his, extension being front loaded. He's down with getting the money up front, which is the way that the Bengals usually construct their contracts. So
go on, finish your point there.
I was going to say, I just think the Bengals need to start evolving and making some concessions here. And I do love Chalk Chapo's point here. And we talk about, Chase should honor his side of the agreement. NFL teams love to not honor their sides of agreements with the guaranteed
especially in the NFL.
Especially in the NFL. Yeah, you can sign a guy for 4 years, $50 million, but say $30 million guaranteed or whatever. You're gonna, if your player's not performing, you'll get out of that contract. You don't mind not honoring that agreement. So why shouldn't that same logic be applied to the other side?
Here's the one aspect that I don't know the answer to, and I hate that this even is something we almost have to talk about because it's kind of similar to what Chalk Chapo is saying here as far as owners when they cry, oh, I don't have the money. Now, the one aspect with this is that any guaranteed money that they put in, that the Bengals have to put that into an escrow account, meaning that they theoretically need to have that money at that moment. This is kind of diving all the way into the financial aspects of it, Mick, which you're infinitely times better than I am when it comes to this. But you got to think how much guaranteed money is going to go into this Jamar Chase deal. The Bengals are going to have that right away. Now, you would think that an NFL team I don't know what's the guaranteed money number, do you think, for Chase? 60 million?
Actually, I'm looking up. It's whatever.
So look while you're talking there. But I just find it, and again, this is more of just making it on a joking matter is that, the Bengals were selling all of those TVs over the offseason. My assumption is that all of those TVs are going into the escrow account to hopefully get Jamar Chase, and maybe they didn't sell enough TVs, so that's why we can't get it. Do you have that number there yet, or do I need to?
50 million in guarantees.
Okay, so $50 million in guaranteed money. Do the Bengals have $50 million lying around? You would think yes. But you never know if this, and guaranteed money is something the Bengals are very particular about. I mean, really, they've given only 2 players in their history guaranteed money of any substantial amount, and that is Joe Burrow and Orlando Brown Jr.
Yep.
You would think that Jamar Chase should be in that same aspect and in that same, stratosphere with that.
Yeah, and I don't think the guarantees is where I just really think that the difference or where they're at and where they're at in their negotiations has to be the timing of it. And I don't think, and they probably got the 50 million lying around. And if not, you're an NFL team that makes so much money that you could go out and get financing for that 50 million if you want. I guarantee that somebody will be willing to lend them $50 million or whatever cash they need in order to
Maybe
do
it's
that.
you.
It's not me.
Wait, you only have 49 million, right?
Yeah. I don't have 50, unfortunately.
I got 50 cents.
So there are avenues to get if you're short on cash, which I have no reason to believe that they're not. I mean, there are avenues for them to get cash if they need to get cash. I mean, but I do think that, and I've mentioned this on some discussion boards, is that like this is one of the problems with being, and I'm going to call us what we are. We're kind of an impoverished NFL franchise. I mean, Mike Brown is consistently ranked at the bottom of the league in terms of his net worth, and the Bengals have reported the bottom of the league and as for the team's net worth.
Because his business is the Bengals.
Their business is the Bengals, and I agree with that. They haven't had a chance to compound the general wealth of being a football family like the Hunt family has, which I don't know how. For a football family, they're like top half of the league. I don't get. Is it because they've been in the league longer? Is it because Clark Hunt was the
head of
commissioner or whatever, the AFL? Yeah. That might have something to do with it too. But yeah, it is a problem of being an impoverished NFL franchise. You have to be smarter with the way that you make these deals.
Hello, Rory. Somebody is trying to come to your door. That was Amazon?
Yes.
Amazon. It is. They deliver that late at night? It's almost 8:30 at night. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I guess so.
I didn't realize that. Man, that's what you get for living in a big city. That's not really. We'll talk more about Jamar Chase probably next week and the week after that, and really every single week until a deal gets done. I don't really know that there's that much more that needs to be said right now, unless Rory might have a couple of opinions to bring as well. She might. She probably does have some hot takes on the Jamar Chase situation. So does she have any hot takes on the Jamar Chase situation, Mick?
She says pay the man.
Pay the man. I agree with her. Speaking of deals that got done, though, Evan McPherson signed his extension. Not really a surprise with that. One of the aspects that I did find, I don't know if interesting is the right word, but noteworthy is that it was 3 years instead of 4. Most of these kicker deals are 4 years. And Evan said the reason for that is that, when he gets to his next contract, his third contract, he's still 28 when that happens. So he's still young, and he's a year younger with it. And I'm like, well, that makes perfect sense to me. Make your money while you can. A couple of injury news to report on that happened late last week in that Bears joint practice. Chris Evans and Deontay Smith both suffered season-ending injuries. Both, I think, had almost identical injuries, patellar tendon tears, which is pretty much the tendon that connects your kneecap to your shin. And I know that that's not exactly right.
That is odd.
Yes, almost identical injuries. Both are out for the season. Kind of leads me into a point that we'll talk about throughout the show today, but at least bringing it up. The offensive line depth.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at just offensive tackle right now. You've got Orlando Brown Jr., who is healthy. You've got Trent Brown, who is unreliable. Safe to say. You've got Amarius Mims, who is, we're not sure on his reliability, but he is currently hurt. You've got Jackson Carman, who is, I don't know what we want to use to describe him. And then you've got Cody Ford, who's kind of a guard tackle flip. And then you had Deontay Smith. So you're looking at this, that really of your tackles that you were thinking were in true competition to make the 53, all of them are gone. And now, as Tommy brings up, and we'll talk more about him a little bit later on, is that you had Jackson Kirkland. And let's put his name into the pocket and talk about him a little bit later on. But Mick, as a whole, is it time to start to get a little bit worried about offensive line depth?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely is time to start being worried, because you have three right tackles hurt right now. I mean, one's out for the year. We don't know what the timetable on Mims or Brown would be. I think that they'd be back by the start.
Brown was back to practice today.
Brown was back to practice today. But he's also, as I've said before, he's been an injury liability his entire career, essentially. So, yeah, I think it's time to start getting worried. And Amarius Mims, I mean, I know he's a rookie in the league. He's also had quite an injury history dating back to his college days. So, yeah, I think it is time to be somewhat concerned. Now, you still have Jackson Carman and Jackson Kirkland on the team, and Jackson Kirkland did have a really good game against Chicago. So it's not like Deontay Smith. I think I had him outside of my 53-man roster this year.
As did I.
Yeah.
But
so it's not like you're missing a huge piece there. But
he still was a practice squad tackle, probably.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's not too worrying that if it were Amarius Mims or Trent Brown that went down with significant injuries, I would think.
Or Orlando Brown.
I think it'd be very concerning. If it's a guy that was on the roster bubble to begin with, it's not the end of the world, but just given the injury history of Mims and Brown, I mean, you definitely want to have another guy potentially brought in, either to the practice squad or to the 53-man that they feel like could still be a stabilizing force in the back end of the roster there.
Speaking of guys that were in roster battles as well, one of those guys hung up his pads. Jeff Gunter, late last week, gets moved to the retirement list. And he just said pretty much his love for the game wasn't there anymore. So we say, I mean, good luck to him. He was probably not going to make the team anyways. Mm-hmm. He might have seen the writing on the wall and just said, you know what, let's go out on top. Let's move to that. And they can't cut me if I retire first. So maybe that was his mentality. Oh, go on.
I was going to say, I mean, I feel like just every player will go through this eventually where they just decide that it's not fun playing football anymore. It's time. It's I need to move on and do something better with my life, or do something else with my life. And, best of luck to Jeff Gunter. Thanks for being a part of the team for the past, this is his fourth year, I believe, or maybe his third.
Correct.
So yeah, just best of luck to him. Thanks for being part of the team.
The biggest news, though, of late last week: orange out against the Patriots. Bengals going to break out the all orange jerseys. Now, I told you last week, Mick, when I can't believe we're now having fashion segments pretty much every week on this show. But I told you that I wasn't necessarily sure how I felt about the black jersey with the orange pants. And if I'm being honest, still not sure how I feel about it. I don't know. I'm going to need to see it in person. Now, the orange jersey and the orange pants, yep, sign me up. Big fan.
Yep.
Big fan. And the orange out, great idea. I'm on the fence about the choice for the game, of it being the Patriots game. I get first game, kickoff, do something fun, but I almost wish they would have done that for like the Commanders, a night game. Am I off base?
Yeah, no, I think it'd be cool to have it done during a night game. Now, open and orange does have like a kind of a nice ring to it. I think that might be the reason why they did it, is to get it to kind of stick to to the branding there. So, I mean, I think any opportunity to see the all orange look would be a good one. I think one thing I noted, we have 2 orange games and only 1 white tiger game this year.
Correct. Yeah, I was leading right into my next point. Steelers going back to the orange jerseys, which I believe they wore last year against them. Mm-hmm. Didn't necessarily go great. And then we knew that the white tiger was going to be Philadelphia. A couple of the other standouts, as we talked a couple weeks ago as well, Carolina again is going to be black jerseys. So I think this is now the third straight trip to Carolina that the Bengals will be wearing black for an early season game, which makes sense. It's a late September game in Carolina. You're thinking it's probably going to be decently warm. The home team probably wants to wear white instead of black. Makes sense. We were kind of curious what happened at Dallas because the Cowboys, for some reason, like to wear their white jerseys at home. I get tradition, whatever. I think it's stupid. Bengals are going to wear black there. I don't know that that's necessarily any huge surprise. The only surprise that I think I really have is the choice to go orange against the Steelers instead of going white tiger at the Ravens.
Yeah.
And again,
I don't know. Yeah.
Minuscule things.
No, I like the orange jerseys a lot, though. So
I do too.
I
do too, but I also like that record in those white jerseys of never lost in that game against Baltimore. That might be a big game.
So you should just wear your alternates whenever you want to wear them. That's a stupid.
Now that I agree. That I want to. Yeah, the 3 times per. Yeah, silly. Glovegate is also a thing now that we have to at least mention. Yesterday at practice, Joe Burrow comes out and he's wearing a glove on his hand. Oh, everybody starts panicking. I'll be honest, Mick, I was super busy yesterday. Didn't even know this was a thing until today on social media. I saw Paul Dehner Jr. tweeted saying, Joe Burrow's not wearing a glove today. I was thinking, did I miss something? Apparently I did. So Joe Burrow yesterday was wearing a glove before he would throw. And then when he would actually go in to take the snap, he would take the glove off, put it in his pocket. He apparently told Ben Baby from ESPN that he does this on purpose when it's hot to manage grip. Zach Taylor said this is something he's done for a couple of years. When followed up with asking why, he said, I don't know. You have to ask him. So Glovegate is a thing, Mick. Is it a thing, or do you buy Joe Burrow saying it's something that, or are we back to the iPad sleeve thing?
No, I'm gonna trust Joe Burrow with what he says. He's the one that's playing the position. It's something that he says he's done. I don't know. I think it was like a humid day, or maybe it was wet out. I don't know. So maybe there was it was to improve your grip strength. He's got small hands, so he's got to grip the ball. He's got to focus on the grip.
We're bringing this back now. He's got small hands.
He's got small hands, not as small as Kenny Pickett's, but they're not big hands.
They are.
So yeah, I don't think it's really much to, talk about.
I agree. It's funny that we are now at the point where he comes out. He almost needs to have a press conference before practice anytime he is going to be wearing anything on his body that is not normal. It's like, just Joe, just tell us it's going to be okay. We'll wait and come back to the joint practice that happened earlier today. I think it makes more sense to talk about the Bears game first than to kind of do weird jump arounds. So, Mick, if it's okay for you, how about we jump into the Bengals-Bears debacle? I don't know if we call it a debacle. I don't know the word to describe it. 23-3, Bengals lose in Chicago. I don't think anybody really was that upset about it. But let's split it up here and let's start positive from a 23-3, Mick. What did you like?
Yeah, there's some things I liked in the game. Pass blocking looked really, really good in this game. We had a bunch of second stringers out there against the first string Chicago defense for much of the first half. For the whole game, they only gave up 4 pressures and 1 sack on 39 pass blocking snaps, and
that 1 sack, woo! My goodness, Logan Woodside got blown up.
Yeah, Cody. Well, I don't think the offensive line gave up that sack. I guess there was 2 sacks in the game.
Okay.
That first one, I think, was just a miscue by Logan Woodside. I guess he didn't see the blitzer coming.
I'm hurting now just thinking about that.
Yeah,
my goodness.
That was bad. The sack that was given up was by Cody Ford on, I think, Woodside in the third quarter, almost at their own goal line is where it was, and they ended up punting the ball from like the 1. So yeah, that was the one sack. Gave up 4 pressures. Highlighting the way here, Jackson Kirkland played really well, as we talked about earlier on the podcast. Gave up 1 pressure in 1 hurry on 33 pass blocking snaps, 98.4 pass blocking efficiency grade. That was pretty darn good. Matt Lee, 0 pressures, hurries, or sacks allowed on 39 pass blocking snaps. So those are 2 highlights there. One of
you
the
took
offensive
the first 2.
linemen, yeah, one of the offensive linemen wasn't very good, but we'll talk about him on the bad side.
Yeah, I know exactly where you're going to head with that. But yeah, honestly, Mick, I think we both deserve to pat ourselves on the back about old Matt Lee, because back before the draft, there were 2 podcast hosts that we said, we're talking about interior offensive linemen we like, and I'm not trying to name any names or anything, but I think it was us that said that Bengals should have drafted Matt Lee, and he's proven us right. He's been really good. Now, again, part of this was against the Bears' backups, but part of this was against their starters. Like, the Bears played almost the first half entirely for the starters, and 85 pass blocking grade. Now, the run blocking grade wasn't necessarily anything to write home about, 62, but it's still the highest on the team. So he's doing really good things, and I think the Bengals might have found their center of the future, a guy that he can learn behind Ted Karras. And here's the thing, too, is that let's say Matt Lee keeps on playing extremely well. I'd be interested is, let's say an injury happens to one of the guards, Kappa or Volson. Could you see them bump Karras out and slide Lee in? Karras does have guard flexibility.
I would see it. Yeah, because I think Matt Lee is strictly a center, where
Correct.
we've seen Ted Karras play guard in the league and play at a decently high level. So yeah, I mean, if an injury were to happen to Kappa or Volson, God forbid, I think that other than Cody Ford jumping in at guard, which I think he'd be probably the best replacement, I think the number 2 option would be to slide Ted out to either left or right guard and to put Matt Lee into the center position.
Yes, I agree. I'm just interested, especially if Matt Lee keeps trending in the direction that he is. I'll go next with another guy that I liked. Bounce back game after not a good one. His first taste, Chris Jenkins came in and played much, much better. He didn't get a ton of action, only 14 snaps, but had a sack. 10 pass rush snaps, graded, just about a 76. I'm not, in fact, I'm not use the word worry. We were more just like, ooh, that wasn't great from Chris Jenkins against backup offensive line for the Bucs. But against the Bears offensive line, that's not necessarily great. He played well. So I think Chris Jenkins deserves into my category of what I liked.
Yeah, Chris Jenkins is also on my list. As you mentioned, didn't have a lot of snaps, 14 snaps played. You also mentioned already the grading, 76 defensive grade, 67 run defense, 69 pass rush grade.
Nice.
Had the sack. Nice. Had the sack that I think it was in the red zone. Or, I think it was a red zone sack from what I remember. Moved around quite a bit compared to last week against the Bucs. In the game against the Bucs, he lined up only 1 time as a nose tackle and 22 snaps lined up as a 3-tech. So I was wrong when I was looking at the alignments last week. So my apologies. So one time as a nose tackle last week, 22 snaps lined up as a 3-tech. He moved around a lot more in this game against the Bears. 7 snaps as a 3-tech. He had 3 snaps lined up as a 3-4 defensive end and 4 snaps at the nose tackle position. So I think them moving around and him just kind of seeing where he fits best into the defensive line alignment, I think that was beneficial to him in this game against the Bears.
Yeah, I agree. I see Tommy bring up here, and I think this is a good one to at least mention. But it's an interesting discussion that we have to have, Mick, is Muma Jong-Meta.
It is an interesting discussion.
Because, and I think you're knowing where I'm heading with this, and I don't know if Tommy does as well. You look at the numbers, tackle-wise, he continues to be really good. Then you look at PFF, and it's like, my goodness, PFF, what did Muma do to you? A 29 of his grade of a PFF, which if you don't know PFF grades, that's That's bad. Like a 29 is bad.
So yeah, and
not
if you rewatch the tape, you can see where his grading was the way it was. Now his tackling grade was fine. I don't have it written down, but I think it was somewhere in the 70s. So the tackling wasn't the issue. The biggest issue was
52-5.
52. Yeah, he did have a missed tackle in the game too. He had a 29.4 coverage grade, which if you saw some of his targets that he had against him, you can see why the coverage grade was not good. He gave up 4 receptions on 5 targets for 29 yards. From what I could tell, at least 2 of them went for first downs. Had the missed tackle. He did have a nice tackle on a punt return that looked really good. Let's see. He took a really bad angle on an end-around run by Roma Dunze in the second quarter.
We were on the phone during that point, and I think I even made a comment to you. I'm like, ooh, our boy, what did he do?
Not a good angle that he took. And then also, so he gave up a few first downs in coverage. So it wasn't a great game for Muma John Meta. I think you and I can both kind of agree on that one. Now the special teams, I think, is an interesting one. His special teams, he graded okay, and he had a good play on a punt return. And I think that's what he's essentially auditioning to play for in the for the 53-man roster. Now there's a linebacker I thought had a really good game, and I wonder. I'm assuming you might have the same guy here.
Are you going to say Shaka?
Yep.
Shaka. Not Shaka Smart though.
No, Shaka Hayward, linebacker out of Duke, if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah,
Shaka had a really good game. Played 37 snaps, 91 defensive grade, 81 run defense, 83 coverage grade. He had 2 run stops. One of them was at the goal line. So when their backs were against the wall, he had a really good run stop on Khalil Herbert, I believe, or maybe it was Homer. And also had a pass breakup on his only target where he was targeted in coverage. So I think that this 5th linebacker battle has became a battle not between Devin Harper and Muma John Meta, but maybe Shaka Hayward and Muma John Meta.
Yeah. And it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and it's something that we'll talk about when we say what we're watching for. It might be on one of our 4 downs. Another guy I think we need to mention of what I liked, and he's been getting some recognition across the league as being one of the highest graders through the first 2 weeks of the PFF season. He's been a guy I know you've been high on as well, Mick, Tanner McLaughlin.
Yep.
He's one of PFF's, I think he's the 4th highest graded player through the first 2 weeks. And he again was the highest graded player on the Bengals offense, according to PFF as well when it comes to that. He continues to do just little things, and he's taking advantage of not a lot of opportunity. I mean, he only had 12 snaps in that game, which can make that PFF grade a little bit misleading because you have 12 snaps, so you don't really have that much opportunity to screw up. But at the same time, he didn't screw up in any of those 12 snaps, which at least has to mean something. And
no, he didn't.
We'll talk about this.
He also made plays.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about this at the end of the show. But you mentioned that 5th linebacker spot. I don't know what the hell they're going to do with tight end, and we're going to talk about that later. But I don't know. What a great problem to have.
Yeah. They've got a. I think any of those 5 tight ends can make the roster. There's going to be one odd man out. Unfortunately, I think so. But yeah, Tanner McLaughlin had a good game. 2 catches on 2 targets for 19 yards. Both of them went for first downs. He had a really nice feel for where the sticks were and how to get there and to get past them. And I think that was something that was really encouraging. He just kind of looks like an NFL tight end. I know that's kind of redundant when I say that, but he didn't look out of place at all in the past 2 games. He's got a really good size, really good range. I think that his run after the catch ability is really good.
You don't break Gronk's records, and if you're not good,
yeah.
Like Gronk's maybe the greatest tight end of all time. You can make that argument. Without question, you can make that argument that he is maybe the greatest tight end of all time. And if you break his records, you don't stink. And
Yeah.
I know our boy Mark says his guy Cam Grandy practice squad. I don't even know that he'll make the practice squad at this point, especially if they keep.
WVU guy is he? Oh no, Mark said that, not Tommy.
No, yeah,
Cam
Cam Grandy's he is a Illinois State guy.
Illinois State. Oh, okay, that's the reason why Mark,
is a big
that
Cam
makes
Grandy
a lot of
guy.
sense.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you liked, or do you want to? I have one that I'm not sure. Is my category.
So, I'll do a not sure. I don't have any stats, but Logan Woodside was getting, I think, a lot of flack on the Houday Nation page that I don't really necessarily feel like he deserved.
A great pick.
The first pick was fine. Like sometimes that happens. Yeah, that's where he got blown up on that play. But the second pick was really bad. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't good. It seemed like the offense kind of did regress throughout the time that he was on the field. So I don't know how much of that was just everybody was tired, from the scrimmages the past 2 days, and then playing a preseason game. I don't know what it was. I don't think Logan Woodside looked as bad as the grading or the opinions on the Houday Nation page would say.
I'm not sure, because I think you could throw him in both categories. Is Josh Newton. Because he had some good, he had some not so good, but also I kind of say that's why he's a day 3 corner. Because I think he shows moments where you say, like the play he made against DJ Moore, phenomenal.
Yeah.
In the first quarter, I think it was the first or second drive. I don't remember which drive it was for the Bears. Phenomenal play. And then he made a couple later on that you're like, ooh.
So the deep ball to Odunze, I don't think was much on Josh Newton. I think that Josh Newton had pretty good coverage. I think that was just a crazy throw by Caleb Williams that was out of structure. The play was going on for quite a bit of time, and Odunze, kind of stuck the landing with the catch. So I'm not going to put too much blame on Josh Newton on that play. But yeah, there were some lapses in coverage from Josh Newton that weren't that play that you need your starting cornerback to make.
And like we said, that's why he went on day 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
or Lance Robinson too. I saw the touchdown. He had good coverage on that play too. That was just a good throw from Tyson Bagent. And
poor guy had 3 snaps and had a touchdown against him. I was like,
poor guy, poor bastard.
I hope, and I know he's probably not. I hope he almost makes the practice squad, just because when you have a guy that's struggling that much, like you just kind of want to cheer for him. He's not going to make the practice squad. I know that, but you just kind of want to cheer for him. What didn't you like? Or who didn't you like?
We already talked about Mumo.
Trey Hill.
Trey Hill's probably my number 1 guy on the list.
Yeah, because Mumo was like a little bit of like, you kind of saw some. He might have been in that middle category too bad.
I still think Mumo did not have a great game. Did not have a good game really at all. But
Trey Hill, though, is where we need to start, because Trey Hill said, "Hey, Jackson Carman, hold my beer. Let me see how I can do. How many penalties did you have? I'm going to try and one up you, bud."
Yeah, so 45 snaps at right guard, had 4 penalties. I think 2 of them were 2 of the false start penalties he had turned 3rd and manageables to 3rd and longs. So those were very poorly timed penalties. 51 run block grade, 56 pass block grade. Surprisingly didn't give up a pressure, but didn't have a great game at all.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know that there's much more that needs to be said. It just, I don't see a path for him to make this team. But at the same time, like we touched on it earlier, the depth at those positions are not great.
Yeah.
And he might just make the team just because they got no one else. They literally have nobody else. One of the things I didn't like, and I found it interesting what happened after the game, was the field conditions apparently were awful. And they touched on this a little bit on the broadcast that I guess there was a concert there not too long before it, and they resodded the field because they had to pull the field up for the concert, and they resodded the field. So because of that, some of the seams were not quite molded. I'm speaking like I know horticulture. They're not congealed. Is that a horticulture word? We're just going to say it is. So because of that, Zach Taylor said after the game that if you look, you saw DJ Turner and Dax Hill only played 6 snaps. And you're thinking, that's not a lot. That was Zach Taylor. He saw the field was not in great position, and he pretty much said, yep, you guys, you're out. You're not playing on this. It's raining. Field's in bad condition. This is a preseason game, and I can't have really either one of you getting hurt.
Yeah.
So I found that interesting. So what I didn't like, it might be kind of a cop-out, was field conditions. And if it's a cop-out, Mick, then I'll go into my next one. Special teams penalties on the kickoffs was atrocious. Now, I know
I didn't really keep track, so I'm kind of...
I didn't keep track of it either, but it was probably at least 4 penalties on kickoff returns, if not even more than that. And I get, of those penalties, I'm not sure any were committed by guys who are going to be on the team in 2.5 weeks. This is also guys doing something they've never done before in their football lives.
Yeah.
And how often do you get an NFL player who is being told to do something they've never done before?
Yeah.
That's rare. But it still is at least something that I didn't like. And it could be one of these things that on Thursday they don't have any, and I'm like, okay, it was an anomaly. But it at least was something I thought was worth mentioning because it was grinding my gears.
Yeah, and I think there's just when you have that big of an implementation into the game, I think you're going to have some bumps in the road along the way, and not to mention, you said that this is something that football players have never done in a football game before. This is also something that officials have never officiated in a football game before as well. So I mean, there's a lot of unknown on both sides on what the best way to go about it, what the best procedure is for how these kickoffs go. You're seeing a lot of flags right now, and I think that it'll probably get better as time goes on. You have more tape on these kickoffs, and you have more of a strategy on how they want to execute. So, yeah, there were a lot of them. There was probably now I'm looking back on it. Was there probably a penalty on more than 50% of kickoffs? You would say?
Yes, I would definitely say that, and it's something probably that Darren Simmons none too thrilled about. Do you have anything else that you didn't like, or do you want to jump ahead into the Colts since I know we're running a little bit long right now? Or anything else that you wanted to mention?
It's now turned into a weekly hate on Shedrick Jackson. Played 43 snaps at outside receiver, did not really do anything at all. 2 catches on 3 targets for 10 yards, 0.36 yards per route ran on 39 routes, had a really bad drop. He did have a contested catch on the catch he made, which was kind of a lame duck throw. That I think Rocky or Logan got hit on, but yeah, just did not have a very good game. And I'd be shocked he's definitely not going to make the roster, but I'd be shocked if he's on the practice squad again.
It's interesting, and I kind of want to come back to that a little bit later on. Was there anything else that you didn't like, or you want to talk about joint practice now? Because there's some stuff that came out today from that.
Yeah, let's talk about joint practice.
Oh, wait. Yes, Tommy's right. 100%. I can't believe we didn't mention this. And this was something I meant to do on my notes. Ryan Rico didn't take advantage of a big opportunity. Didn't have a great game.
Doesn't have a great game. His hang time wasn't very good. Now, one of his punts I thought was pretty impressive. That's the one where they were backed up all the way on the goal line, and definitely not a lot of space back there, and still managed to rip off like a 50-yard punt. So I don't think it was a terrible game for Rico. I thought there were some bright spots, but not enough for him to win this job at all.
Exactly. He could have easily won the job on Saturday, and he did not. And I'm interested to see what Brad Robbins' injury is, because we haven't heard anything new with that. So joint practice happened today against the Colts. They'll take tomorrow off before playing on Thursday. The biggest news that came from this is that Myles Murphy left on a cart with a non-contact leg injury.
Shoot.
Now, and again, this might be me reading into it because everybody likes to read into injuries, is that when he left on the cart, and Mick, you can tell me if I'm reading too far into this, he was sitting shotgun and not sitting on the back. To me, that's good news.
Yeah.
Or is this just me trying to be an optimist?
No, I think it's better news than if he was just kind of laid out on the back. So hopefully it's fine.
Because
he's one guy we really can't afford to lose.
Yes, especially after one of your guys retired and you've already lost Cam Sample. I mean, you're starting to run out of opportunities there at that DN room. And what was one of the deeper sections on the team. Zach Taylor said coming up that he does not expect starters to play on Thursday, except for, quote, a few here or there. I don't know necessarily what that means. Probably, I would assume Dax Hill and DJ Turner is probably who he's talking about to try and do that a little bit. Like Tommy said, Miles Murphy did walk off on his own power to the cart. He did have a limp during that, so hopefully that is a positive sign. Bengals defense, though, apparently was spectacular against Anthony Richardson, to the point where even they were getting frustrated that he wasn't throwing the ball. There was a moment where Jay Morrison says that Geno Stone was yelling, that he was just yelling at Anthony Richardson, telling him to stop throwing to spots and actually throw to receivers. Which I like. BJ Hill apparently said at one point, throw the damn ball to him, which I like. So the Bengals defense on the offense, Burrow, he threw a pick, but from what it sounds like is the pick was one of those that in a real game, he probably wasn't going to throw the ball. It was just one of those that, it's practice. Why the hell not go for a throw? But Mike Gesicki, big day today, including a one-handed catch. He had 6 catches, big one. And we have not really seen any of him throughout the first 2 games. I think he was technically in on that first drive, but I don't believe he was targeted. So I'll be interested to see how that goes along. So that's most of the joint practice. I don't know if you did any reading on that, Mick. I know you've been busy today. Or should we just jump into 4 downs for Bengals Colts?
Let's jump into 4 downs, but very encouraging news from practice.
Yes, much better than what we were hearing out of the Bears practice from last week. You want to go first on your 4 downs, or should
I? You should go first.
Okay. For me, the first thing I'm going to be looking for and this is where we're just giving 4 things we're looking for Thursday night's game. Again, it's going to be on Prime Video. If you live in Cincinnati, though, it will be on local TV. But if you live out of the market, like I do, you're going to be able to watch it on Prime, which I'm excited for. I don't even have to go through any doing this. Yeah, Slim BJ is absolutely a menace. My first down is I'm interested to see how this tight end battle continues to take shape. You're going to see no Gesicki. You probably won't see any Drew Sample. But you're going to see those other 3 guys compete for probably 2 spots. Really, though, I think you're just going to see Tanner McLaughlin go against Tanner Hudson. They're not going to cut Eric All. And I'm fascinated by how that goes up because this last game, there's not a lot to watch for, but that to me is my first down of what I want to see.
Yeah, I think that'll be an interesting, position to watch between those 2. I think that it would be irresponsible for the team to keep 5 tight ends on the roster. So the 2 Tanners are going to have to battle it out here. And we've seen a lot that we've liked out of Tanner McLaughlin. And Tanner Hudson had a bad game against the Bucs. I think he had a better game against the Bears in his limited action. So I think it'll be an interesting battle to see. I guess my first down would be to get to see what we didn't get to see in the game against the Bears, which was seeing more Dax Hill versus DJ Turner for that CB2 roster spot. I think that we're going to be seeing both of them a little bit, as you've said before, that those are probably the couple of starters that are playing. And also Josh Newton in that mix as well. I don't think Josh Newton's out of the race by any means. But yeah, seeing those 3 kind of battle it out, and hopefully we kind of get a clear winner for week 1 against the Patriots.
I will say that one of the notes came out. I think it was Jay Morrison. He put it on social media. He had said that There was one red zone sequence, I believe, that Anthony Richardson went 1 for 4 for 0 yards. The 3 incompletions were all to Dax Hill that he had PBUs on. And the 4th one was to Mike Hilton on a screen that he apparently blew up.
Nice.
So that's a positive to see. Second down for me is a guy who we didn't mention, but you saw some good things about in the Bears game. But now even more so with the injury to Myles Murphy is I want to see more of Cedric Johnson.
Yeah. That's good.
His role is growing more and more, especially with retirements and injuries and so on. And even Sam Hubbard is still not 100%. He started to return to practice as well. He could have a much bigger role week 1 than we necessarily thought even last week, based on some of the injuries that are mounting up. So for me, my second down, Cedric Johnson, I want to see on Thursday.
Yeah, that's a good second down. For my second down, I will go. I want to see a clear winner out of this 5th linebacker spot battle between Muma Shaka Hayward, and I guess Devin Harper's in the mix, even though I think he might be on his way out. But we've seen a really good game from Muma, and we saw a not very good game from Muma, and I think it's kind of the same script from Shaka. They just were better in different games. So maybe seeing a clear winner out of those two would be my second down.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to watch. My third one is similar to something you just talked about a couple of minutes ago for third down, is the 6 wide receiver spots are pretty much solidified. I think we can say that. I'd be stunned if they keep 7 receivers. But I'm interested in those guys. Who's going to step up and make this team as far as the practice squad?
Yeah.
You mentioned Cedric Jackson has not looked great. But really, if we're being honest, none of those guys have really looked great. Kendrick Pryor has had his ups and downs, and he's now battling a thumb injury that's probably going to keep him out on Thursday, which could cost him his practice squad position. Kwame Lassiter,
he's probably looked the best out of all those,
which is not saying much. Cole Burgess has not really taken advantage of his opportunities, but it is almost guaranteed that one of these receivers is going to miss games this year. That's just this is, and they're going to be looking to probably bring up one of these receivers, and which one of these guys can solidify himself on the practice squad to be somebody that they can put faith in if they need to take, even if it's 5, like let's say at Baltimore, Cedric Jackson was the guy. And he probably didn't have but 5 to 10 snaps in that game last year on Thursday night after Burrow had gotten hurt. But who is the guy that they're going to trust the most that could come in a game at Baltimore and perform at a high level for 5 to 10 snaps? And that's what I want to see for my third down on Thursday.
Okay. My third down for yours was on wide receivers. I'll go with another offensive skill position group. I want to see more heat out of this running back battle competition for the fourth
jerk,
spot.
You stole it. That's exactly where I was heading.
Yeah. So we just haven't really seen a clear-cut guy out of the potential guys to get that 4th running back spot to win that battle. I mean, we've seen Noah Cain.
I don't think there is going to. I think they're going to keep 3 running backs.
They might do that. We also think that Samaje Perine, there's a good chance he's back on the team if Denver ends up cutting him. So this might be a moot point, I guess, for third down. But, I mean, we've seen some Noah Cain last week, and I thought he looked okay. Didn't look anything spectacular. And then Elijah Collins, he was one of your bright spots in the game against the Bears. I mean, it's really in the game against the Bucs. But, yeah, we haven't seen a clear-cut winner between those two, and I'd imagine both of them are going to have plenty of opportunities to try and win that roster spot on Thursday,
or to be the one running back on the practice squad.
Yeah,
like that. It is going to be interesting, and that was exactly what my fourth down was. Is can one of them, even if they have a big game, can one of them push them to keep 4 running backs?
Yeah,
because they don't want him to get poached. Now, I don't think a guy like Noah Cain or an Elijah Collins would get poached, but you never know with some of these teams. I haven't done deep research into the running back situations for other teams across the NFL, but they're watching. That's what scouts are there for. So that was my fourth down that you took. But great minds think alike, right? Do you have a fourth down then?
Yeah, I guess I want to see a bounce back game from Logan Woodside. I mean, we saw a really good game from him in the first preseason week against the Bucks. Not nearly as good of a week against the Bears, albeit he had a bunch of second and third stringers going up against the first team defense for much of his time on the field. But seeing him have a bounce back game in the last preseason game, I think would just be nice to see.
Yeah, agreed. Because I mean, you need a guy on the practice squad because you never know. You never know when you might need it. I mean, even if this Jake Browning rib injury is something that is nagging, rib injuries take time. It could be interesting with that. Instead of, I guess we can really quick make a prediction for Thursday. And then I want to talk a little bit about the 53-man roster as a whole, because by the time our next show happens, we will know it, which will be back to Wednesdays starting next week. You got a prediction for Thursday night?
No, not yet.
I'll say Colts 13-10. How about that?
Yeah. Well, this thing loads. I can cheat and tell you what I think.
You're gonna see what the spread is. So what do you think the spread is? Since you haven't looked at it yet.
-6, 34 for the over.
Really?
So
I don't know if Anthony Richardson is playing though, so I would imagine no.
I'll go 16-9 Colts.
Gosh, talk about 2 preseason scores. I love it. 53-man roster discussion here for us. I like Tommy here. 3-0. Walk-off field goal by Evan McPherson. Oh my. That would be a perfect Thursday night football game on preseason last game. Mick, what happens at tight end? Make your prediction right now. 53-man roster is released this time next week. What are we seeing?
Tanner Hudson's the odd man out. I think it should be pretty obvious that he's the odd man out in this battle. They drafted 2 tight ends this year that they have 4 years of roster control under, and Eric All and Tanner McLaughlin. You signed Mike Gesicki with, I don't think you really had much of a reason to cut him, especially after this past practice that he had. And then you just signed Drew Sample to a 3-year contract. So I think Tanner Hudson's the odd man out here.
Especially because McLaughlin has looked good in the preseason.
Yeah.
He could be a guy that very well could be poached. And I mean, Tanner Hudson, he might get poached, but he also might be a great practice squad tight end.
Yeah.
I mean, if Tanner Hudson is your practice squad tight end, that's great. Yes.
And he's been one before.
And it also, the Bengals waited to sign him in free agency. It wasn't like he was an early pick, which means that a lot of teams aren't necessarily interested in a tight end who is almost 30 years old. Does Jackson Carman survive?
That one's tough. I think it's between him and Trey Hill. Yes. I think Jackson Carman's going to survive, and I think Trey Hill's out.
What an awful decision.
Because I think Jackson Kirkland, given his game that he had, I think 53-man.
I agree. I think he's made
for
the
any
decision.
slander I've had on you in the past, Jackson Kirkland. You did not play very good last preseason. You've looked a lot better this preseason. So great on him for putting in the work and getting better. And I think he's making the 53-man now.
I think Carman survives, but there is a huge if with this. And it's kind of moving into my next topic that I wanted to mention here is he survives, but if there's something better, the Bengals are going to claim on waivers. Yeah. I think back, the perfect guy would be, I think it was 2, maybe 3 years ago, when the Bengals claimed Max Sharping. That would be the perfect kind of player that they would need. A offensive lineman who has a little bit of versatility, who has played in the NFL. Listen, you're not going to get a guy who's released who has played at a high level. You're just wanting a guy that is at least somewhat competent and is maybe better than Jackson Carman. So I think that is what you're going to be seeing. And there might not be anybody out there. But then I'd be really interested, too, is if they do cut Jackson Carman, does somebody claim him?
Yeah, I would say somebody does.
I would think so, too. You know, they're just going to see second-round pick. He's got the tools. Maybe we're the team that can fix him. But I don't know. I think it's going to be really interesting to see. What would be a realistic surprise for you for this Bengals 53-man roster?
Realistic surprise.
Like, could you see them maybe keeping 6 linebackers?
Yeah,
that to me is the interesting one because of the new kickoff rule.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to see how much emphasis gets put on linebackers to guard that play and defend that play.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't know if you feel good enough about Jong Meta and you feel good enough about Hayward to keep them both.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. A guy like Tyson Anderson, too, I'm fascinated by as well because he finally came back from injury, 9 months removed from his season-ending injury. Is he just going to be cut based on, sorry you didn't get back soon enough?
See, I
Dejon Anthony?
I was going to say, I think both of those guys make it because we all had DJ Ivy pinned to make the PUP list, right? So that's where I think
you're saying Jalen Davis is out then?
Yeah, I think Jalen Davis is out. Dejon is the backup nickel corner. And then Tyson Anderson's a backup safety still.
I'm just very interested, and I think you're going to see some roster gymnastics. And I think, you know, where are you seeing here? I just mentioned, for me, the most obvious position for a roster claim, and that is on the offensive line. Where else are you seeing potential claims for the Bengals to make?
Also, I mean, we've already mentioned this prior. Samaje Perine coming back. So I think running back is a position they're going to be looking at, especially with the season-ending injury to Chris Evans. I know he was your 4th running back on the roster, but if there's somebody they can have to kind of shore up that position, I think that they'll jump at that. Offensive line, I think you've already mentioned. I think that's a spot that they could definitely be looking at. I think the defensive line as well. If they can find another nose tackle, because you only have one on the roster and that guy's not played any preseason, has been injured, in McKinley Jackson, I think you should definitely jump at that as well if you're the Bengals.
You got Jay Tufele.
Oof.
But pretty much you'd be looking for this year's Jay Tufele.
Yeah. Or if the starter just happens to get cut, that would be nice too.
Yeah, like maybe the Lions will think of cutting DJ Reader.
Yeah.
Because he would definitely make it through the waiver claims to the Bengals, without question. That would definitely work. It wouldn't be like the Panthers would immediately try and claim him. We are just about to wrap up here. So there's the 53-man roster that happens there. Next week on the show, we are going to talk a little bit more about the AFC. The AFC North as a whole. How do the Bengals stack up there? And then we're going to dive into the season, make some season predictions. And then in 2 weeks, we have the Bengals taking on the Patriots. We'll dive all the way into that. Next week, we're back to Wednesdays as well. Make sure you follow us on your favorite podcasting platform, Spotify and iTunes and so on. So make sure you do it there. Really helps us out. Give us a 5-star rating on that as well. You can also follow us on Facebook, YouTube. We're on all of the social media platforms except for TikTok, and I guess we're not on Instagram. So really, we're not on all of them. I just lied there. But yeah, so make sure you follow us there so you don't miss any of the best Bengals podcast hosted by 2 guys who have season tickets in section 306. Right? Good. Any parting thoughts?
No, if you're going to the game, have a good time. Be safe. We will not be at the game on Thursday. So
yeah, because I got to get ready for big old high school football showdown on Friday night.
Yeah, and I got another fantasy draft.
Yes, I'm in that fantasy draft as well.
Oh yeah, you need to do that.
Yes,
Are you
that's
gonna
really
do it while you're broadcasting.
It's Thursday night. No, my game's Friday night.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
No, I would not be able to do both things at once. It's all I can do to broadcast a game.
I just make your do it or whatever. But yeah.
No, I learned one of my new interns is a Steelers fan, and absolutely not, because he would draft one of them, and I'd release them. I don't care who it would be; they get cut first pick, gone.
Well, the good thing there is they don't have a lot of fantasy studs, so
no, they don't. So I wouldn't have to hopefully be a backup regardless. Alrighty, we'll be back normal time next week, back to Wednesdays at 7:00. Have a good night, Nick, and Who Day.
Yep, Who Day. Thanks for watching.